Good day, you are watching the news from Kazakhstan. I'm Marina Kim, and here are the headlines. No new action plan for the OSCE. The Astana Commemorative Declaration simply reaffirms the organization's existing values. The dancing premier, Karim Masimov, comments on the WikiLeaks scandal. Citizens on the street react to the closing of the OSCE summit in Astana. The first summit of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in more than a decade ended with mixed results on Thursday. The event, which sought to revive the transatlantic group, failed to highlight any new directions or purposes. The host of the event, Kazakh President Nursultan Nazarbayev, gave his closing press conference more than 12 hours behind the schedule. In his somewhat muted speech, the head of state thanked everyone for the constructive and fruitful work and noted that the summit opens a new stage in the life of the organization. Nazarbayev also expressed hope that the freshly signed Astana Declaration will start building a community of Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian security. By the time of press conference, many reporters and participants of the summit left the Independence Palace. Those who stayed behind used their creativity in coming up with the ways to describe the event.
The world media called the OSCE summit in Astana a failure of the peacekeeping mission. Nursultan Nazarbayev's final press conference aimed to summarize the grand event was delayed to the early hours of December 3rd. For a long time, the participants couldn't agree on contentious issues of the White Hart agenda. Dear journalists, we would like to inform you that the press conference with the President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, will be held at 7 p.m. In the meantime, reporters were offered sandwiches and city tours despite the snowstorm and -20 outside. Nevertheless, many remained at their posts, with some afraid to drift too far from the conference hall in hopes for a soon briefing. The main stumbling block seemed to be the peacekeeping conflicts, the resolution of which was undertaken by Kazakhstan as the chair of the organization. However, the issues of Nagorno-Karabakh and the territorial integrity of Georgia never found the right direction towards resolution, despite all statements by Kazakh authorities. Obviously, the sides cannot reach an agreement. It was a very subtle move to offer reporters a city tour right at the time of the scheduled press conference. On the other hand, Kazakhstan was unlucky the summit coincided with the WikiLeaks scandal, and everyone was in a bad mood, especially Medvedev.
When the final resolution of the OSCE summit was revealed, the global media called the Astana Commemorative Declaration a face-saving document, which simply reaffirmed the organization's existing values and brought nothing new to the table. Participants of the event failed to agree on an action plan to revitalize the international group. If nothing, the summit in Astana left more questions than answers about the status of the OSCE as well as relationships between the supposed partners. The next report has more on the events of the day leading up to the major political and diplomatic disappointment.
President Nazarbayev saw the final chord of the political forum in reaching a consensus and presenting the world with the final declaration signed by all summit participants. However, the day's agenda included the most difficult questions. The topic of frozen conflicts in the CIS, considered a priority for Astana just yesterday, now became a stumbling block. The debates over Russian-Georgian conflict have barely died down when Armenian President Serge Sargsyan made a dramatic statement on Nagorno-Karabakh, ignoring some protocol nuances. In case Azerbaijan resorts to military aggression, Armenia would not have any other choice but to recognize the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic de jure and to invest all its capabilities into ensuring the security of the people of Artsakh. South Korea chimed in immediately after. Seoul demanded to denounce the actions of Pyongyang in the late November when North Koreans opened fire at their neighbors. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Kim Sung-hwan, said this should never happen again and the OSCE should play a decisive role in ensuring peace on the peninsula. Still, the most unambiguous comments were spoken by the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko, who criticized the organization for the use of double standards. Actually, the OSCE is something like a stick in someone's hands in the run-up to the elections of this or that state. Electoral standards that representatives and officials of the OSCE refer to are unfortunately non-existent. The most anticipated speech by a representative of the G20, the Italian Premier Silvio Berlusconi, was left for last. In his report, the politician practically radiated optimism. Perhaps it is not a coincidence Berlusconi was the only one who on Wednesday received a kiss from the host Nursultan Nazarbayev in the best tradition of Soviet general secretaries. The signing of the final declaration was delayed. The announcement was expected by midday on Thursday, but the solemn press conference didn't take place even 12 hours after the designated deadline.
The OSCE summit in Astana, is it a complete failure or a grand achievement? The culmination of Kazakhstan's chairmanship was to be nailed by the declaration signed at the end of the event. Now that the document is revealed, experts and observers discuss the future of Kazakhstan as well as past pitfalls unforeseen by the Foreign Office.
The first worrisome sign for the welcoming party was the decline to attend the summit by almost a half of 57 invited heads of states. The rejection of the Moldovan leader was a shock, as he refused to sit at the table with his opponent on the Transnistrian conflict. Interestingly, the OSCE chair already reported the steps made towards its resolution as one of the Kazakhstan's achievements. Another of Nazarbayev's associates, Uzbek President Islam Karimov, also skipped the summit. This political slap, however, was not really surprising, say political scientists. The story goes back to the Soviet relations, and unfortunately the official Tashkent is still sensitive about these things. The Uzbek leader refuses to take part in major international events because we do not see the importance or effectiveness of these organizations. We do not see any significant progress or results of these forums, thus making our participation impractical. The first day of the summit wasn't perfect as well. When the discussion over Georgia grew into a dispute and was about to turn into a real conflict, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev left the event warning that Russia will not sign the final declaration if it will have even a word about Georgia. Famous film director Bulat Atabayev believes that from directing point of view, the summit was organized exceptionally poor. Rather than avoiding all sharp corners, the chairing country set them up as its achievements, which led to a completely predictable reaction. Knowing all this, how could hope to adopt any declarations? That will never happen. Medvedev's exit shows us just that. I believe that this even is the expression of the will of only one person to show the world how he fights for human values to maybe win a Nobel Prize sometime later. The main question now is whether the final declaration will gain full strength. If it will not be signed, even by one representative of a member state, all initiatives and proposals will become useless. Foreign media already calls the Astana summit a failure of peacekeeping mission. Before assuming chairmanship, Kazakhstan promised to resolve long-standing conflicts. Political scientist Dusim Satbayev says that now everything will depend on the plans of Latvian government. Everything will depend on the way the following chairman will treat these initiatives. If there will be continuity, Kazakhstan will be able to promote its ideas further. Otherwise, they will be quickly forgotten, just as happened about the Istanbul summit in 1999. The same can happen with the summit in Astana. Perhaps this will be for the best, because even Kazakhstan might not want to recall all missteps and mistakes of its own chairmanship.
On Thursday, a branch of the world's largest steelmaker, ArcelorMittal Temirtau, had to slow operations at 3 blast furnaces after the failure of power supply and a gas pipeline explosion killed several workers.
A 55-year-old fueler died as a result of an emergency, and just several hours later the body of a 22-year-old worker was found in the Aglo shop. The leadership of the coal company sees no connection in these incidents. The explosion was triggered by the emergency shutdown of the Temirtau energy system, caused by the heavy snowfall which left the city with no electricity and heating, and also dropped the plant's blast furnace gas pressure. Apparently some oxygen might have ended up in the furnace, causing an explosion and then fire. Presumably, the emergency was caused by the icing on power lines, strong winds, subsequent overlap of wires and their rupture. This happened to all 4 power lines of the distribution zone, leaving the old city with no electricity and heat.
An October court recognized Zhang Zhenbiao, the Deputy Director General of the company CNPC October Munaygas, guilty of bribing, reported on Thursday news agency Kazakhstan, citing the press service of the regional court.
The court ordered Zhang Zhenbiao to pay a fine of $19,000 in addition to the legal costs. The top manager of CNPC Aktobe Munaygas is charged with bribing Serik Urimbayev, Aktobe Region's Chief of Employment Coordination and Social Programs Department, in the amount of $2,000. According to the investigation, the representative of CNPC Aktobe Munaygas maintained the interaction between the Chinese contractors and state authorities of Kazakhstan.
The company CNPC is also mentioned in relation with a far bigger scandal, namely the WikiLeaks US cables release. Earlier this year, exiled businessman Mukhtar Ablyazov accused the president's son-in-law, billionaire Timur Kulibayev, of commissioning an illegal deal on the sale of the state-owned shares of CNPC Aktobe Munaygas at a price below market value. For his services, Kulibayev supposedly received a bribe of around $166 million. Back in spring, the prosecutor general refused to review the case.
10 months later, the indirect confirmation of Ablyazov's accusations arrives from diplomatic sources. Referencing WikiLeaks Business Weekly Vedomosti published an article, Gazprom and CNPC hope for the breakdown of Kashagan and Karachagana consortiums. The publication is based on a secret diplomatic report of the US ambassador Richard Holland following his dinner with Marat Idenov, who held a top position in Kazmunaygas. To quote WikiLeaks, Idenov said they both pretended to ignore the core problem, Kulibayev's. He alleged avarice for large bribes. Idenov averred he told Kulibayev, "Please watch your image and reputation. You have a real opportunity to improve your own image and the image of the nation." Idenov alleged that Gazprom and China National Petroleum Company continue to circle like vultures, hoping that the Kashagan and Karachagana consortia will implode, and then they can pick up the pieces. Won't happen on my watch, Idenov would.
Kazakhstan will not be focusing on the information released by WikiLeaks, said on Thursday the spokesman for the Foreign Affairs Ministry Ilya Samarov in his interview to website Tengri News KZ. His superior Kanat Saudabayev commented the matter one day prior during the OSCE summit in Astana.
We will calmly overcome this incident, and as a foreign minister I can say that our strategic partnership with the US will not be affected in any significant way. WikiLeaks' disclosure of information about Kazakhstan coincided with the arrival of the US State Secretary Hillary Clinton for the participation in the OSCE summit. At her very first press conference, the official expressed her position on the issue. So I believe that this was a very irresponsible, thoughtless act that put at risk the lives of innocent people all over the world. Prime Minister of Kazakhstan Karim Masimov also reacted to the release of secret cables on Thursday, giving an interview to a foreign reporter. The diplomatic communication portrays Masimov as a tireless dancer in an Astana nightclub. Prime Minister, however, sees nothing wrong about the matter. I appeared on the internet with my wife. I love dancing with her, and to publicize this fact otherwise, I would have to pay a lot of money. Instead, I got it for free, so I'm happy about it.